I begged my victims, flattened them with a rolling pin, and drowned them in brownie batter. I am Thomas Linwood, known as the Muffin Man, and I am regarded as the first documented serial killer. I was born in Yorkshire, England. My father was a local baker at the Utility Muffin Research Kitchen. He was a respectable man, but at home he was a cruel master. I can still remember the day when his iron spatula, his trusted tool to create pastries, became the tool he used to torment the son who trusts him with his life. He didn't stop there. When he was done hitting me, he abused me sexually. He got a pastry bag covering my face with it, and even though I tried my best to fight for a breath of fresh air, all I could inhale was particles of flour and my tears. Like a dough of pastry, he kneaded several parts of my body, added butter, and inserted muffins, a specialty to any part of me where it fits. After he was done, he always gave me one of his muffins to keep me from crying. Growing up from an abusive childhood, all I wanted to do in my life is revenge, to feel what my father felt whenever he abused me, and to be able to be on the other end of that iron spatula. When I was 15 years old, I started raping peasants until it was banned by King Henry VIII. Given all I knew was baking, I opened a very unpopular shop. People complained about too much cyanide or too many glass shards in their pastries. But the bakery was popular among children and chock full of sugar. They ran around, playing and being a nuisance. To stop the children from coming to my shop, I started luring them by using a muffin on a string, pulling them closer inch by until I could get a hold of them, and beating the life out of them using a wooden spoon. Parents began teaching their children the psalm about the Muffin Man so they would not fall victim to the muffins I used as bait. To maintain my business, I needed to get rid of my competition. Chef Randall drowned in my brownie batter. Chef William was beaten until his face was no longer recognizable. Chef Carver experienced his mind-blowing matchlock. Chef George was flattened by my trusted rolling pin. Chef David was baked until he was golden brown. Chef Aaron was shaped and baked, and Chef Adam was crushed into a mortar, which became one of tastiest ingredient of my pastries. I was eventually caught by the police after the suspicion of the death of Chef Adam was my doing. I was arrested but free to leave as no one could prove anything. On the way back, an angry mob got their hands on me and pummeled me. During dinner that evening, I stabbed myself with a fork instead of a cockroach, making me scream and choke on the dumpling in my mouth, which caused my death.
Everyone should know about what has happened to Rachel Morin. Rachel was a mom of 5, last seen on Saturday when she left for her usual hike on the Ma and Pa Trail. At 11:20 p.m., when she still hadn't returned, her boyfriend Richard reported her missing. Come search efforts on Sunday, Rachel's car was tragically found still at the trailhead. And then around 1 p.m., a volunteer searcher found her body in the woods. According to local police, they have no video footage from the parking lot that night. They say this was a part of Rachel's normal exercise routine and, quote, "It could be someone who came to learn that routine and knew where she might be, or it could be a random attack." Aside from that, we know that Rachel started dating her new boyfriend just about a week ago. He has since taken to Facebook to announce that while he has a criminal past, he would never hurt Rachel. And this criminal past actually consists of 26 prior convictions. Charges like second-degree assaults, violating restraining orders, malicious destruction of property, resisting arrest, being a fugitive from justice, and drug possession. Regardless, right now police are adamant that they don't have any suspects. And if you saw my post in May on Lauren Heike, you know this could be horribly similar. She was found murdered on a Phoenix hiking trail after being attacked by a complete stranger. If you would like to donate in Rachel's name, all proceeds will go towards her service and then to her 5 children. The family is experiencing back-to-back losses following the passing of her baby niece just last week.
Do you know how these Only Murders in the Building actors were cast? This was Steve Martin's first regular starring role in the TV series, and according to a 2022 interview, it will likely be his final acting role. He doesn't just star on the show, he's also the co-creator and executive producer along with John Hoffman. Martin's original concept was 3 older men coming together over a shared interest in mysteries, but then they're too old to go downtown, so they only solve murders in their building. It was Martin Short who suggested they star in it together. They've been friends more than 3 decades and worked together many times, starting with the 1986 comedy Three Amigos. It was the producer's idea to bring in a female character generations off for the third lead, and suggested Selena Gomez. Hoffman had watched her on Wizards of Waverly Place and thought she was perfect for the role. Martin wasn't familiar with any of her previous work, but he had heard of her and he loved the idea. They were slightly concerned she might be a nightmare because she'd been a child star, but they said she was a joy to work with. In fact, Short described her as such a great actress because she pretended to know who we were. Gomez's fame did make it difficult to shoot her scenes in the city, though. Everywhere they went, there were fans and paparazzi all over yelling her name. The producers wanted the casting directors, Tiffany Little Canfield and Bernard Telsey, to cast some of New York's top stars, but also strike a balance by bringing in some lesser-known actors so it didn't feel too gimmicky. They also often used celebrities as a misdirect, such as casting someone like Paul Rudd not to be the killer, but to be the body. Sting agreed to appear on the show because he's been friends with Martin and Telsey for a long time. Fun fact, between takes of Sting's episode, he entertained the cast and crew by singing some of his hit songs. According to Canfield, a lot of actors auditioned for the role of Oscar, but there was something about Aaron Dominguez that was so charming and appealing, and then also kind of broken. He reportedly did all of his own stunts for the show. The character of Tim Kono wasn't even fully developed when they started casting. Julian Keehee auditioned virtually over Zoom and was cast. The character was originally named Tim Lee, but they changed the last name to Kono to reflect the actor's Japanese heritage. There was a list of names they considered for Detective Williams. Divine Joy Randolph was a front-runner from the start, but they weren't sure they could even get her because she was so busy. Randolph initially thought her role would just be the law enforcement killjoy who gets in the way of the leads. She was shocked when Hoffman told her there would be an episode from her perspective. Martin and Short offered the role of Teddy Demas to their longtime friend Nathan Lane. He thought it would be an out-and-out comedy, but later realized it was much more complicated and darker than he expected. Fun fact, the series earned Nathan Lane his 7th Emmy nomination, making him the most nominated actor in TV history. James Caverly, who plays Teddy's son Theo, helped create the role. In an email interview, he wrote that there are one too many creators who write disabled characters as two-dimensional, fixating on their disability without room for growth. He had multiple conversations with Hoffman and the directors to figure out how to authentically portray Theo.
Is France for real arresting people for using Snapchat filters? If you're an influencer, they might. Finally, a country that's not afraid to stick it to those blue checks.
Mike, you have a blue check.
Yeah, but I'm not an influencer. Refreshing. Under France's new law, influencers not only have to disclose paid promotions, hashtag sponsored, but they also have to disclose if photos of themselves have been retouched or created through AI, hashtag catfish. And they're really not messing around here. If an influencer is caught breaking this law, they can face up to 2 years in prison and over 300,000 euros in fines. Plus, you'll be banned from using social media, so you can't even be an influencer anymore. France has had enough with the sneaky face tuning and dog filters. What do you guys think? Is this good for transparency, or is France taking this too far?
Mike, you've been AI this whole time.
Oh, get over it. This isn't France.
She was, in every sense, a social media star. Mehek Bakari, often joined by her mother Ansarine, enjoyed huge fame on TikTok. Her videos watched millions of times. But today, the pair from Stoke-on-Trent, along with 5 others, have been convicted of killing 2 men. At the centre of the story was an affair. Mehek's mother Ansarine, a married woman in her 40s, had been secretly dating this man, Saqib Hussain, who was just 18 when they met. After Ansarine decided to end the relationship, Hussain threatened to tell her husband, as well as leak sexually explicit photos of her. Desperate to avoid that, Ansarine and Mehek arranged a meeting at the supermarket car park. Hussain, driven by his friend, arrived in a silver Skoda, expecting to find one car, but after spotting another, decided to leave. He was quickly followed by both cars.
After around 10 minutes, all 3 cars arrived on the A46 in Leicestershire. And it was here that Hussain made a desperate call to police, telling them that men in balaclavas were trying to ram him off the road. He told the operator, "They're trying to kill me, I'm going to die." That was followed by a scream and then silence.
The silver Skoda was later found in 2 pieces. Both Hussain and his friend Hashim Ijazuddin, who'd only agreed to offer a lift that day, died instantly.
It's come zooming down.
Later, in police custody, Mehek Bakari told officers she had been the victim of road rage.
This silver car's come and cut into the middle, so we're basically all 3 cars very close. I braked and I said to my mum, "What is this car trying to do?"
But the jury have now seen through her lies, convicting her, her mother and the 2 drivers of double murder, as well as 3 others to 2 counts of manslaughter.
It has been extremely painful for all of our family in losing Hashim at such a young age, but also in the circumstances in which we lost him. We will always be extremely proud of our son, Mohammed Hashim Ijazuddin. Whatever he would have done in life, we're certain that he would have excelled in it.
A double act to the end. But it's violence, not videos, which this mother and daughter are now famous for.
Yeah.
What is braised on? There's things on the long sleeve.
Yeah.
And the boots.
Well, boots are neither here nor there, but the uniform's unironed. It's in atrocious condition. He's got his shoulder flash on the wrong side.
Yeah.
He's got the incorrect beret on. It's ill-fitting. Any of the members of the Commando Regiment wear a really dark green beret, same as the Royal Australian Regiments. And the beret is like molten. It's like you found it at a disposal store or something. And it's incorrectly fitted. What they normally do is they wear the beret as small as they can. Yeah. G'day mate, how are you?
Yeah, good.
Good, thanks mate. My name is Senior Constable Murdoch. I'm from Rapid Action Patrol Group based here on the Gold Coast.
Yeah, mate. Yep.
Mate, I am also a sergeant in the Royal Australian Army, okay?
Yep.
I hold the rank of sergeant at 511 Field Battery.
Yep.
Do you have your military ID on you?
I don't actually at the moment.
You don't?
No, because all I've got is my veterans, like just veteran affairs, because I'm discharging.
Yep.
Yeah.
And how long have you been in the service for?
I was a clearance diver in the Navy to begin with.
Yep.
And then I did selection for the Commando Regiment.
Yep.
And then, yeah, but as I said, I'm getting out of it.
Yeah. And how long were you in the Army for?
Like I was a clearance diver in the Navy for 7 years, and then with the Army for just on near 12 months, 13 months.
13 months.
Yeah, and I've just come out of Kapuka, and I've come up here, and yeah.
Well, so have you done your selection for Commando
Yeah,
Regiment?
I've done selection, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I did all that, yeah.
Whereabouts did you do that?
That was done at Holsworthy.
Yep.
Yeah, you do 9 week selection course,
Mm-hmm.
and then from there you start like Rio cycle.
Right,
Yeah,
yeah.
I have done selection, yeah.
Okay. Brent, the reason is this is you, Brent?
Yeah,
okay?
yeah.
The reason I've asked you the question,
Yep.
okay, is I've been in the Army for 25 years.
Yep.
The first thing I know is that the Australia flash that's on your shoulder
Yep.
is actually on the incorrect shoulder. Okay, it should be on that side of the uniform. Okay, it's the same through the Navy and also the Air Force. Okay. Secondly, the beret that you're wearing, okay, is non-standard issue. Okay.
Yep.
Royal Australian Regiments as well as the Commando Regiments wear a dark green beret. Okay, I notice you have the
Yeah,
Commando
it's this one
flash.
here, mate. Like I know the beret. Like I've
Yeah.
got mates who are serving for it, so
Yeah.
it's that one here.
So why don't you, seeing as that you're in uniform, and you're aware also that general standing orders at the moment is that military personnel, unless on official duty, are not supposed to be wearing the uniforms because of the heightened terrorist threat. You're aware of that?
Honestly, I did not know that because I've been, as I said, I've been home for a few weeks. I did not know, and as I said, I'm getting out of the Army, and I'm off to see the Department of Veteran Affairs now. So I didn't know.
Okay. Do you have any other identification on you, a driver's license or something similar?
Yeah. What's this about? Like, what have I done?
I reasonably suspect at the moment that you're impersonating a soldier.
No, I'm not.
Okay.
Like, as I said to you, like I can't believe this. I'm not impersonating a soldier at all. Like, I can show you pictures of all, like, enlistments of me in the military.
Right, yeah.
Like, I'm not impersonating a soldier at all. Like, this is all my enlistment into the Army.
Yeah. So who are these people? Who is this fella here?
Which fella?
This fella here.
That's with this fellow. That's a man.
It's a man, is it?
Yeah.
Apologise to her when I see her. So it is. Okay. So when did you enlist in the army?
In the Army?
Yeah.
That was back in June last year.
June last year.
Yeah.
Right. So, as a soldier, if you'd just come through Kapuka, you'd know that your uniform Okay, the flag or the colour patch here, the Australian national flag, is worn on the left-hand sleeve.
Oh, mate, what? To tell you the truth, I just grabbed it out of the cupboard. I didn't even look.
Have you got any other?
Honestly, I haven't done anything wrong. Jeez.
Okay, what I'm going to need to do is ask you to sit down over there for a moment, enjoy your coffee while I make some inquiries. Okay, I'll need your service number. Have a seat over here, thanks.
What's the most twisted true crime story you've heard? Corey tucked her 3 young sons into their beds, then headed down to her kitchen in her luxurious home in suburban Utah. Once she got down to the kitchen, she yelled out for her husband Eric to come join her. She had some big news that she'd heard that day, and wanted to celebrate with her husband. A moment later, when Eric walked into the kitchen, Corey grinned at him and handed him his drink, gesturing for them to go upstairs to their bedroom. The two of them headed upstairs and sat down on the bed, so Corey told him the big news. Corey's small real estate firm had just found out that day that they were going to close on a 20,000 square foot mansion for $2 million. Corey had been working really hard on her real estate business for years, and this was her first big break. Totally beaming with pride, Corey sat there on the bed, clinking her husband's glass, and talked about how great their lives would become with all of this additional income. But fairly quickly, both of them decided that they were too tired to stay up and talk, so the two of them decided to go to bed. Eric had gotten his COVID shot earlier that day and had been out of it ever since. They brushed their teeth, changed clothes, and were about to go to bed when they heard their 7-year-old crying in his bedroom. Both parents let out a groan, and then Corey stood up, indicating that she was going to console their child, kissing Eric before she walked out of the room. She went down the hall into her son's room, where she got under the covers and went to bed. A few hours later, Corey suddenly sat up, inside her son's bed. For a moment, she didn't even know where she was. The house was silent, it was totally dark, and she was confused. But then she remembered she'd gotten up to help her son fall asleep. She climbed out of the bed, tucked him back in, gave him a kiss, and then she left his room. She went back into her bedroom, where she climbed into her bed. She saw that Eric had kicked off all the covers and was sleeping on his back. Corey lay down on the bed and cuddled up right against her husband. She pulled the covers up over both of them, then she closed her eyes to go to sleep, but right as she did that, she noticed something strange. Eric's body felt freezing cold. Corey opened her eyes and sat up in bed to push Eric, but he didn't budge. When she pushed him, he felt really heavy, like dead weight. Starting to panic, she started to yell Eric's name several times, but he didn't budge. Corey leapt from the bed to grab her phone and dial 911. When the dispatcher picks up, Corey is so hysterical as she's looking at her husband lying motionless in his bed, that she could barely tell the dispatcher what was going on. Finally, she got her message across and the dispatcher said, "Stay calm. The ambulance will be there as soon as possible." Moments later, Corey heard the sirens outside and cried with relief as the paramedics ran upstairs to revive her husband. Unfortunately, they saw right away that Eric was no longer with us. The first responders had no idea what killed Eric. He was in great shape. Eric was an avid runner and outdoorsman, so the idea that this guy had suddenly died was really suspicious. When they asked Corey what she thought happened, she was totally in shock, but she did say, "I don't know. I have no idea what happened to him." But the day before, he did get the COVID shot and he had an adverse reaction to it. He really wanted to go to bed, which seemed odd. Corey and the first responders agreed that it was pretty far-fetched for the shot to lead to death. Eric unaliving himself was brought into the equation, but he didn't have any reason to want to harm himself. He was a very loving father who adored his sons. He coached on all of their sports teams and went on adventures with them. In addition, his business was booming, and he had just heard that night that his wife's was going to start booming as well. Eventually, the police told Corey that it was time to open up an investigation. She could barely understand what the cops were saying. Her mind was on her 3 sons that were still asleep, unaware that their dad had passed. While the family waited for autopsy results, Corey focused all her energy on her 3 boys, who were heartbroken at the loss of their father. Eric was such a hands-on father, that his absence was enormous in these boys' lives. Since the kids were so little, they really couldn't grasp what happened. They asked Corey things like, "Where's Dad? When can I see him again?" These questions broke Corey's heart. She didn't have any answers for them. She tried to find a children's book that dealt with grief in the hope that it would help her sons, and what they were going through. None of the books she bought helped at all. A few weeks later, while the details around Eric's mysterious death were still unknown, Corey called her sons over and told them stories about their dad. As she told them these stories, she began drawing pictures of Eric with wings and a halo, waving at the family below. It was the first time since Eric's passing that the boys connected with the fact that their father was gone. However, through the stories, they still had this meaningful connection with him. Every night Corey would tell these stories and draw these pictures. With no new information and no closure about Eric, Corey had an epiphany. She could see how powerful the stories were and how it has helped her boys cope with this loss. So, she decided to make a grief book to help other families in similar situations as her. 6 weeks after Eric had passed, Corey was backing out of her driveway when she saw a police car coming her way. It was the lead detective on Eric's case. Immediately after getting out of the car, the detective said that he had big news for her. He knew he had to tell her in person because it was going to be very upsetting. He told her that the autopsy results were in. Eric did not die of natural causes, he actually died from a substance that is very powerful and often mixed with H. Just a little bit of this substance can be lethal. It turned out that Eric had 5 times the lethal dose in his system. Corey was totally shocked by this news and told the detective that Eric doesn't use substances. It really didn't make any sense. The detective was respectful and said, "I totally understand, but these are the results. We need to find out where he got this substance from. We are going to search all of the devices in your house to see if we can find communication with whoever got the F." As she began thinking about all of their devices, she suddenly remembered that Eric's business partner Cody had taken his laptop shortly after his passing. Cody had been a thorn in the family's side for several years now. Eric and Cody had been very close friends when they started their business together 10 years back. However, they had a serious fallout 2 years before. Corey told the detective, when the men were out on an elk hunting trip, Eric had illegally shot a bull elk. Cody reported it to the game warden, causing Eric to lose his hunting license. They remained business partners, but it was clear that their relationship was totally fractured. Corey believed that Cody had more to do with the substances than he let on. The detective told Corey that he appreciated the information and was allowed to collect all of the devices. After this conversation with Corey, the investigation fell off. When they talked to Cody, they didn't find anything worth pursuing. There was nothing for the police to operate on. While the family waited for answers, Corey focused her energy on taking care of the boys and writing her grief book. A year later, the police still had no idea what happened to Eric, but the grief book was finally done. It was posted on Amazon, and right away the book was a total hit with parents of grieving children. As more 5-star reviews poured in, so did requests for her to be interviewed on TV. Corey had no idea her book would be so successful, so at first, she was terrified to appear on any shows. Eventually, she decided to say yes to all the interviews because she was very proud of what she and her kids created. She knew that Eric would be proud too. However, what Corey didn't know was there was going to be a massive unintended consequence from publishing this book. Ever since Eric passed away, the police searched every device looking for a connection to where he got the lethal substance. At some point during the search of the devices, the police found something very unusual. They knew it very likely had to do with Eric's passing. Unfortunately, they didn't have any evidence to prove that, so they had to sit on it. Because of the media attention from Corey's book, Eric's passing also got a lot of media attention. The unsolved nature fascinated the public and tons of tips began pouring in. The general public believed that he did not overdose on that substance, he was murdered. The alleged killer from the public's perspective was the same person that the police in Utah had become suspicious of from the unusual things they found on the devices. Shortly after getting these tips, the police in Utah finally believed they had enough evidence to go after this person, and they headed out to make an arrest. Because the case is ongoing, we don't know exactly what happened, but this is what the prosecutors think happened the night of Eric's passing. That night, Eric was upstairs when he heard Corey calling for him, telling him to come down and join her. So, he went down and greeted her in the kitchen. Immediately, he saw his wife grinning ear to ear, and she promptly handed him a drink and said, "I have big news and we're going to celebrate." After that, the two of them headed upstairs, clinked their glasses, and took a sip from their cups. The drink that Corey made for both of them is called a Moscow Mule. It is made with ginger beer, vodka, and lime. But when Corey made Eric's drink, she added one additional ingredient, a lethal dose of F. It turned out that Corey had been stealing money from Eric's bank accounts and he had found out. Eric also discovered that Corey had been taking out massive loans in their family's name, which he was really upset about. In fact, he was so upset with Corey that he wanted a divorce. Sensing that the divorce was imminent and the money faucet would be turned off, Corey took out a $2 million policy on Eric and then killed him. Then shortly after that, she wrote a grief book to help her sons cope and sold it for a profit. Police say that Corey had been working for weeks trying to figure out the right dose of F to give her husband. The story that she told first responders was also a lie. After she poisoned her husband, while he was laying there still on the bed slowly dying, she just got up and paced around the house for several hours. During that time, she was Googling things like, how to destroy electronic evidence and luxury prisons for the rich in America. These searches were the highly unusual and suspicious things that the police saw when they first looked through the devices. As much as it made them think that Corey had something to do with Eric's passing, they didn't have enough to arrest her. However, after Corey published her book and went on a huge tour promoting it, Eric's family knew Corey had something to do with it.
What's the worst crime that I seen an inmate convicted for while I was in prison? Now, I've stayed away from this topic simply because it's the most horrific crime, and I've been locked up with serial killers, rapists, molesters, the most demonic, evil piece of shit you can imagine. But this case is just the most horrific. And it hits close to home in a notorious projects in Palm Beach County called Dunbar Village, which is very respected in prison. But this case isn't. And the projects don't respect them and torture these kids for what they did. So it all started a little bit less than 15 years ago in the projects of Dunbar Village. And there was a fight between about 5-6 juveniles over a bike. They were trying to steal a bike from a kid, and the kid was fighting, and whatever happened there, no one really knows. They say that someone got the best of the other and whatnot. But it wasn't over there. So later on that night, multiple juveniles went to the house where they tried to originally steal the bike from, made them open the door at gunpoint, and proceeded to rape the mother. Yes, the juveniles, the dudes that are under the age of 15 and 16 are raping this guy's mother in front of their son, who is also a juvenile, at gunpoint. But it doesn't stop there. They then take the gun, point it at the young juvenile, and make him have sex with his mother in every way possible, to straight humiliate and destroy their lives. Then, as they leave, they throw ammonia and bleach and all types of chemicals on every part of the body and house that they touched while there. This is kids under the age of 17 doing this. So the cops come, once they're called, immediately they find enough evidence of witnesses, and they lock up 2 of the ones that were mainly involved through DNA and other ways of getting them, right? So fast forward, they get a life sentence. I think one tells and gets like 75 years. And I'm in prison with one of them who got the life sentence. And Palm Beach County, especially Dunbar Village, T-Ave, a few other, like a lot of spots, Riviera, they stick together hard. And they're respected in prison, and they did not respect this. And they would beat the living shit out this dude, slice him, stab him, poison his food. I mean, he had it bad in prison. But a law was passed in Florida where if you're under the age of 18, when you commit your crime, they say your frontal brain isn't fully developed and you can't be sentenced to life. So I remember I'm in confinement and he's across the wing in confinement telling everybody, fuck you, I'm about to get 20 years, I'll be out this bitch before all. He's laughing about this shit, this sick demonic piece of shit. I remember within 3 weeks he comes back from going to outside court in Palm Beach, and the judge was like, well, I can't give you a life sentence, so I'm gonna give you 45 years. He came back looking sick, thought he was gonna get over on the system. The reason why, being around serial killers and just pedophiles, the worst, just demonic evil entities that walk this earth, the reason why this is the worst is because these are young kids doing this to another young kid, and it is the worst and most vile thing you can do. And how does a kid even think to do this? And I'm not gonna lie, this dude would get tortured. I mean, he get humiliated. He had no respect, because Palm Beach is very respected in prison. They stick together and they're all about that action. They're all about fighting. And when someone like that comes on the compound, they have to deal with that. And that's what was dealt with. Go look it up, the Dunbar Village rapes, the most horrific crime of any criminal that I met while on the inside. And I met them all. All right, guys, stay out, stay free, us.
To avoid possible contamination through the air, please keep shelter in your residence until further notice. If you are a resident of King County, please stand by for further updates.
What? What's wrong with you? It what? It took my daughter. Parker? Please, let me inside. Parker!